Okay, I don't really have a hype song for this one, to be honest. I just wanted you to hear that piano at the beginning of A&W because it's just so gorgeous. The whole album's gorgeous. But let me stop simping for Lana Del Rey and actually get into the purpose of this video. So it's currently about midnight where I am. It's getting past my bedtime. But I really wanted to record this. Today we're going to be talking about a topic which I do truly think is at the core of my success. And I do think it's pretty much the cheat code to success. And I know you hear that often. I even say that kind of often. Well, it's because everything I talk about essentially is really important, I think. But if there would be one message that I could broadcast to the world, it would probably be this. And this video isn't scripted. I have no bullet points even. I'm just kind of going off the dome because I kind of felt this way tonight and I wanted to express this to you. So if it's going to be a bit hard to understand, I apologize, but I'm going to do my best to keep this as concise as possible. I made this video about half a year ago, and I was doing the whiteboard format, actually. I'm not on like a digital whiteboard like now, but I did it on like a regular whiteboard, and the production quality was kind of chopped. It was like horrible lighting, horrible microphone and everything, but I did get like 100 views or something and one comment, and it was this comment. And the reason I like it so much is because I also felt like this. I also felt like this was the shit. It was probably my best video yet. And I'm going to try to give this to you, but even better now with better production quality. So my whole thesis began behind this notion when I started asking myself the question, why do I keep making bad decisions? And it isn't even on like a deep level, making bad decisions. It's on the level, why do I keep doing things that aren't in my best interest? Right? We all have this concept. I'm assuming you've been on like self-improvement, or you've started doing things that are kind of good for you. You're not an absolute degenerate watching this video. We know how instant dopamines, the bad habits, instant gratification goes like this, then it goes down, and then it goes slightly up. So basically, you're trading seconds of pleasure for hours, if not days, of, slumber and lethargy and the bad stuff. If you do, delayed gratification, you go down and you might not like the thing, but slowly it's going to go up and you're actually going to like it. And usually this actually exceeds the area of this. So this is better and this is bad. And the reasons that's so important is because you're getting more with this. Or sorry, actually I didn't say that correctly, I don't think. So the difference between this and this is actually bigger between this and this, meaning though you're paying a bit of bad, you're actually getting more good out of this. And here it's just like you're paying a few seconds of good, and then you pay a lot of bad. So essentially, we all know that realistically, we're literally, even if we're maximizing pleasure, we're maximizing hedonism, it's better to go for the delayed gratification things. So if we follow this knowledge, there's literally only two options why we still choose to do these things. Actually, I'm going to write 3 reasons, because I come to think about it and I can think of 3 now. So the first one is actually the healthy option. I call this inflating experiences. This is where we know very well that this is going to be a negative trade overall, but this experience, we want to make it as good as possible, and that's why we're choosing to do this, knowingly that we're going to have, a hangover afterwards, for example. This is, for example, going to a wedding, and you choose to have a few shots of the beverage of your choice because you understand that, it's time to have fun here, and we want to make this wedding as good as possible because there's only a few of these in my lifetime. This is absolutely fine. It's just that this amounts to, I think, less than 1% of why people do the usual instant gratification activities. The other 2, which I think are the grand majority, are lack of self-love or dysregulated emotions. So let me explain. I'm going to start with number 3 because number 2 will become more apparent once I explain this. Instead of dysregulated emotions, I also could have typed lack of ability to regulate emotions. And what I mean by this is every single time we cope and we choose the thing that we know is bad for us, we're doing it to escape something. So this is you. And a sudden rush of loneliness comes over you. You remember your ex. You remember those times you had, which were very nice. You also might remember how your high school bullied you. You also might just get a craving. And it will sense some form of a negative feeling inside of you. And usually when we chase pleasure, it's not actually to chase pleasure. It's actually to get rid of the negative. So that's pretty much every single time we cope. Every single time you get that sudden boost of dopamine, you could almost always trace it back to wanting to escape a negative emotion. And understanding that that negative emotion will pass and actually regulating it, actually experiencing it and sensing that emotion is a key skill to achieve anything in life. if you cannot put up with negative emotions, as Carl Jung said, whatever you resist persists. It will only come back stronger. This is why we're experiencing stuff like brain rot. This is why mental health disorders are at an all-time high. There's more therapists than ever. There's more free resources than ever. There's a bunch of things to combat mental health, much more than there were in the 1900s, for example. Yet, these diseases are running rampant, all of them mental diseases. Why? Because we just simply don't have the ability. Now, of course, it's because of technology and this and that, and I agree to a large part those things very well did contribute to this, but I would say it's because technology and these kind of things, these synthetic substances, a bunch of sugar, alcohol, etc., those are at a sky-time high. And those things only allow us to escape reality. Every single time we're at a state where we're kind of sad, just like the drawing I had previously, and we're feeling negative, we choose this, because this is a fix. I want you to take a step back with me and understand that what you're trying to run away from is an emotion. It's a negative emotion. And what, at a first principle level, an emotion is it's a signal. If this is you, and you see a lion, excuse the drawing, I wasn't the best at that in my art class, and you see the lion, you get this negative emotion, which is fear. Usually it's fear, it's stress, it's some signal to activate the part of your brain which will pump you with cortisol, pump you with adrenaline to make sure that you're energized and you can run away from it. It's actually a signal to your brain, and all it's set there to communicate is escape this situation as soon as possible. We do not wish to engage with this activity. Because through your mammalian experience, through as a mammal you've gone through fucking time, through millennia of programming, there's a thing called evolution. And evolution happens to you because your body kind of learns what's good and what's not. And you learn that this is not good. Maybe in your direct experience, you've also seen one of your tribe members get slaughtered by it. But, innately, that's why we kind of fear snakes and spiders and lions and these kind of things, because those have somewhere in our genetics been implanted in us, that those things are like venomous, those things are nasty, those things will kill us. And now our brains have this innate knowledge in them. It might not be 100% genetic, might not be 100% innate, it might be cultural, whatever, nature or nurture, I don't fucking care. The point is this, and the reason you feel fear is to avoid this situation. Fear is a signal in this instance. And just on the other side as well, feeling joy, feeling bliss, feeling peace, feeling any kind of negative emotion will give you, we want this signals. It will give you signals to remain exactly where you are. Hunger will tell you to satiate your body because you're running out of energy. Every single emotion is a signal to your body to do or not do a certain activity. Understand that if you feel a negative emotion and, let's say you're just in a state like this, you will want a fix. You'll want to go up there. And the easiest thing to do is to reach for your phone and to start numbing your mind. Is to start distracting yourself. And, the molecule that drives all of this behavior is dopamine. I'm making like a full 3-hour guide on dopamine. It should be out soon. Might even be out. Just check the description. I'll update it if it's out. You can either choose to resist it and, reach for your phone, reach for your chocolate bar or something, and then flood your brain with nice chemicals where you go up here. But the problem with that is not only this trough that follows right after, where you feel lethargic and numb and, nihilistic, but rather, if you choose to resist, you're losing the sense of listening to your emotions. You become just this, dysregulated emotionally. And that's a very, very big problem, because now you're not communicating to yourself. You become detached from yourself. Your brain becomes untrustworthy to you. This is why things like projecting happens to you. This is why people end up being very emotional easily. This is why some people have outbursts. This is why some people are super envious of others. A lot of your negative emotions that just seemingly come out of nowhere aren't coming out of nowhere. They're being repressed inside of you and they're looking for an excuse to fucking escape. And once they get the slightest excuse, they're going to come out. So the only possible thing that you could do is to surrender to these emotions. I'm sure you can relate to an extent, but I used to have these instances where I would do something that's really, really awkward and it would end up replaying in my brain over and over again, leaving me in this kind of agitated, stressed, even shameful state. For example, we had like a secret Santa in one of our high school classes, and I ended up pulling the name of a girl who I found attractive, and on the day I gave her, this shit gift, and I went in for the hug, and she kind of didn't see it, and then she went in for the hug, but I was already pulled back. It was the most awkward experience ever. Actually, it wasn't that bad. It was like an 8 out of 10 awkwardness. It was relatively awkward though. But I ended up thinking about that over and over and over and over again. Everyone else had fucking forgotten, but because I wasn't willing to let myself feel the emotion, it kept coming up. If I had just sat back down in my chair and I took a deep breath, instead of tensing up and being like, okay, anyway, let me reach for my drink, if I fucking sat back and I owned it, and I sat back in my chair and I took a deep breath, and I was like, that was awkward. And I just took a few deep breaths for 2-3 minutes. I just let my mind tell me whatever I needed to be told. It would have dissipated. That's what I do nowadays, and it works fucking perfectly. If you let your body understand these emotions, from that point on, you can make a logical decision about it. Oftentimes, when you get triggered, when you're in this state before you choose to indulge, if you kind of surf the wave, this is what psychiatrists call urge surfing. If you surf the urge, what ends up happening is you realize that it will disappear. It's just like a wave. That's why you surf it. This is what it comes like. You have this huge indulgence to give in, and it's peaking here, and you realize that, oh shit, it's like going to drop off because I didn't. My body's giving me this 3-minute time frame where I'm really craving chocolate, where I'm really craving intimacy. If I don't choose to give in to that thing, it's going to disappear. And even with hunger, although you would think hunger is different because, you're just going to get hungrier and hungrier, the hunger signals that your brain produces are very different to how much food your body actually needs. It's all governed by insulin, but I'm not going to get into that. I hope you understand this by now. So that's probably the biggest shareholder in why people give into instant gratification nowadays. But the last thing is probably lack of self-love. So what I mean by this is, once you understand all of this, you're just so down bad that you don't even give a fuck anymore. You understand that this is going to go up, and it's going to go down, and this down part is going to be bigger than the up part, but you just don't give a fuck anymore. You just want a fix now. These two are kind of like symbiotic to one another. They can both be true at the same time. And even though this lack of self-love option might seem like not many people suffer from this, usually it's option 3 that people do instant gratification because of, I'm not sure. Do your actions actually reflect that you're 100% loving of yourself, or even 50%? If you've probably been around this online space of, self-improvement, you've probably heard of the arguments of self-acceptance versus self-betterment. Self-improvement, rather, making sure that you're a better version of yourself that is more lovable, at least that's what you think, or just accepting yourself as you are and loving yourself and, just having self-love. I feel like none of these are possible. The reason I feel like none of these are possible is because if I'm a piece of shit, what is there to love? But the second one is, if I'm constantly comparing myself to others, also what is there to love? Someone's always going to be better than you, and you can't give your life to the pursuit of always matching yourself compared to others. And also, if you say, oh no, I'm just comparing myself to myself, does that mean you can never stop? Does that mean you always have to get better? Does that mean every single ounce of your value is determined by what you did today? That doesn't sound like a too fulfilling life for me. So what kind of options are we left with? My kind of breakthrough with this whole interpretation of this argument came when I understood the basics of spirituality, and rather who I actually am. When we refer to the I, like me, who I am, the I, we usually refer to the ego. This part in the mind which has built up itself through labels, through identities, through perceived realities. I am a runner, I am an entrepreneur, I am a smart person. We give ourselves these labels because it helps us govern our reality. But all of this can be disproved, and I'm going to do it really quickly for you. So, before we get to this kind of I that I was talking about, let's take the argument of you are your body. If I just ask you who you are, what are you going to say? Well, first of all, not even your body actually. Before your body, you're probably going to say that I am my name. I am Daniel Curtis. Well, first of all, of course, you could rename yourself. You could have been given a different name, so that's clearly not the case. Okay, let's say I am my body. Well, if I chop your arm off, are you still yourself? You might say, oh no, but it's my brain. You can have a brain transplant, you know that. A heart transplant. You can literally get rid of all of your body. Actually, every single cell that you have gets replaced in like every 5 years. So you're clearly not your body. And this is where we get to this area. Okay, I am my mind, maybe. Am I my thoughts? Well, you can think of being rich. It's not instantly going to materialize, is it? A lot of people wish they were this, wish they were that, and you can shout it in the mirror, but spoiler alert, it's not going to happen. So clearly not your mind. Well, am I me? Am I my ego? This is where we get onto a bit more interesting things. You're still not. You're still not exactly any of those things, because if we're being truthful, you're experiencing this life through sheer consciousness. That's all you are. A lot of people call this light. Some people call this God. I personally call it consciousness because I come from more of a scientific background and this makes a lot more sense to me. A quote I fucking love, and this isn't the most popular Aurelius quote, but it's probably my favorite actually. It's, what are you afraid of losing when nothing in the world actually belongs to you? I love this because it gives such light to what this is really all about. Listen, nothing belongs to you. You are nothing. You're just this consciousness that's observing this human experience. That's all you are. Whether or not you believe in science, you believe in this God, that God, this can be proven pretty much. This isn't a too high level topic. Scientists have found about pretty much everything, have found a bunch of information about pretty much everything apart from consciousness, because that's the one thing that you can't really analyze yourself, right? All you can say about consciousness is that it is. That's it. That's the only thing you can say that's true about consciousness. So what I mean to say by this is, once you realize that none of this is real, or it's real but it's not yours, it's not you, you get to choose it, and you get to have the relationship with it whichever you want. So my battle with self-acceptance and self-betterment came to an end once I realized that I accept that I am God, I am consciousness, and that's perfect as it is. So I can never be broken. Anytime something outside of me happens to me, anytime I get a test result that I don't like, anytime I don't get hired for a job opportunity, anytime a business does less money than I would like it to, I'm not stressed about it. Worst comes to worst, I'm still fucking me. I can never, ever, ever, ever be broken, and that's such a good feeling to have. Every single time something happens, and it might not be the way you like it in the physical reality which we live in, you can always improve upon it. Right? So, once you have realized you have negative self-talk to your mind, choose to fix it. Choose to have a better relationship with your mind. Now, of course, there's two ways to go about it. You could either, go with the spiritual approach to make sure that you love yourself, which helps to an extent, but also you could go with the improvement approach. I choose both, because now myself I truly love. It's a question of if I love my mind. I can come to the subjective conclusion that I don't like how my mind looks right now, and I can choose to improve upon it. Now, even if I choose option 2, I'm not going to be in a fucking hate relationship with my mind, because I understand that it's just not in my advantage. Even if it produces thoughts which I don't like, I'm going to choose to change them, but I'm not going to shout negative things at myself, because I understand that that's just, for lack of better words, R-worded. If this interests you, watch my first video on this channel. Actually, it's not my first video, but it's like the first whiteboard video. I should also link it below. It's about how to change your identity and the way you think. I go very in-depth into this topic. If you don't like your body, you can also change it. You don't have to hate your body. It's just the physical vehicle in which you are. The reason I go so bullish on my body and I'm such a health freak is because I understand that I will have a better experience of this world around me if I'm doing it through a good vehicle, which is my body. If I'm healthy, if I'm feeling nice, I'm going to be making better decisions. All of this, all of the things that are, very close to you but don't actually belong to you, you can choose your relationship. And that goes even to the outside of you. The things that we didn't even tackle in this conversation of what am I, even with your family, even with your friends, even with your belongings, with everything, you have a certain relationship which you can, damage or improve. It's your choice how you go about all of it. And once you realize that you are nothing, you are just one of these things, whichever word you want to use, the world becomes your oyster. It's this quote, man. It's this quote. The most productive I've ever been is when I just listened to my intuition. I listened to myself. And I stopped listening to my thoughts. I stopped listening to these thoughts telling me to indulge in these instant gratification things. And I stopped letting my mind dictate whatever I did. Because in the beginning, when your mind is a horrible place to be, which for most people nowadays it is, it's really, really hard to make good decisions. And on that thought, the way you make good decisions isn't actually by having a lot of information. You see, in this example, there's two people, and they can have the exact same information, yet because one is feeling a negative trigger, they're feeling a bad emotion, they might choose to indulge and, spike their dopamine. Another person who has a clear mind, and although they have the exact same information, both of them know that the thing with which they're going to cope with is bad for them. The second person who's not feeling down and does not need a fix they're not going to indulge in a fix. So essentially, the biggest shareholder of how quality decisions you make isn't actually your information, it's actually your frequency. I promise I'm never going to use that word again, but what I mean by frequency is thoughts and emotions. Thoughts and emotions are what make up your frequency, but I'm just going to call it like state of mind from now on, because that's a bit less triggering to people who think spirituality is retarded. The reason I started with these kind of topics first, and I didn't get into this right away, is because I think these are cornerstones for you to understand what I'm going to say by thoughts and emotions. If you're constantly in a state of craving, if you're constantly in a state of numbing your emotions and dysregulating yourself, you're going to be in a bad mood always. You're always going to be anxious, you're always going to be on edge, you're always going to be stressed, you're always going to be suppressing something that is knocking on the door trying to come out. You can never, ever, ever make good decisions that way. Secondly, if you're over-identified with this human experience right now, these things, they will sometimes be bad, even if you're the most regulated person ever. You're going to be reliant on them way too much. So what happens is, of course, information matters, but most of the time, you're going to be making decisions which are based on this, and mostly actually this. Remember, the reason you went into the craving, the reason you gave into the craving, isn't because you didn't know it was bad. It's because you fucking needed a fix, because you felt down. And I'm not saying, by the way, that you can never feel down. You're always going to, because that's just the balance of life. The reason I fucking talked about this in the first place is so you learn to detach. Do you understand the difference between these two sentences? I'm hungry and I feel hunger. I'm feeling the emotion of hunger. That's such a different thing than I am hungry. If you're saying I am hungry, then you're going to be like, okay, well, I better eat then because, I am hungry. I want to satiate myself. If I say I feel hungry, I'm just making the observation that what I feel right now in this body is hunger. I don't have to act on that, right? I can really choose what I'm going to do with that. The difference is if this is hunger and this is me, I'm just going to try to draw a smiley face. I'm actually creating distance. So in this instance, these two are like married. They're on top of each other. In this instance, the bottom one, there's distance between them. There's me and hunger. I understand that there's a correlation and, I'm feeling it, but it isn't me. So whenever you do feel negative emotions, you're going to start making better decisions because you're going to learn to detach from them and actually come from a rational point. I'm going to tell you something I haven't really told anyone before, but in the past 5 years, there's 2 really bad decisions that I made. And both of them were in terms of moving in with people. And both of them happened in a state where I was feeling down and I was over-identified with that state. So in one of them, I had just left university and my friend was telling me as soon as I was doing business with him, by the way, like a marketing agency. And he was telling me as soon as we become profitable, we'll move in and this and that and, all sorts of things. And although it was his idea and everything, and I kind of went along with it, I still to an extent blame myself because I could have seen it coming. Of course, I'm in the state of hindsight bias, but before there were a bunch of red flags. Like what ended up happening was he basically didn't even move in with me, and it all ended in like 2 months. And I was just sat here, lonely, paying the rent, doing all the chores and everything. So it was quite a nightmare situation, and I was feeling really down then. But even when I made the decision to move in with him, it was because back here I was lonely. I was really, really stressed. I was trying to make ends meet. I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't have friends I could talk to. He was the only guy that I could do business with, that I could do about this huge passion of mine with. So I was coming from a place of need, of neediness, and I couldn't actually choose to handle these emotions because, first of all, I was dysregulated emotionally and I never felt my emotions. I was just a fiend who was constantly giving into these negative signals down here. And also, I was way too identified with all of these emotions I was feeling, and I thought that I need to fix it now because I am lonely, I am bored, I am etc, etc, etc. Had I realized that I'm feeling these things, I have these unmet needs, but I can meet them in other ways, or I can make an agreement with my mind that I'll meet them in the future. It's totally possible. Or I could just listen to these emotions and let them pass because they fucking will, just like every urge can be served. I don't even remember, honestly, why I drew this fucking graph, but I'm going to say the thesis of this video now, and that is mental health above everything. Mental health is pretty much what I would identify as, your thoughts, your relationship with yourself, and everything around that. Although I've talked about dopamine and spirituality, I really do think that these topics really tie into mental health, because if you think about it, mental health is literally everything. If you like yourself, and if you can regulate your emotions precisely, you're going to have no problems in life. And they really do mean that. And if not totally no problems in life, they will definitely be decimated. You know, in the beginning, when you start to get onto self-improvement and, you start living a bit more healthily, people tell you to use someone else's brain. I'm sorry, this is supposed to be like a brain. I'm not going to, it's too late for me to actually go into these quality drawings. What they mean by that is if you're like, too much of an adrenaline junkie, you're constantly riding the high of dopamine and looking for a fix, sure, you probably don't have the information. Sure, you probably would be better off asking yourself, what would this person think? If you're starting your business, you would be better off thinking, what would Alex or Mosey think? But that becomes a very flawed mindset quite fast. A lot of the people whose brains you're using say their points of views because they've lived their life. They can't actually contextually give you good advice because they are not you. Not only do they lack the information about your precise situation, but they also don't know your desires. They also don't know your goals. And this is how you end up with fake desires. You see some people who are kind of like you in some areas of life, and they really have a goal to reach something. Maybe they even speak about it, maybe they don't. And you kind of adopt that desire from them just because they're so similar in other regions of life. It must be that they're you, when they're fucking not. Anyway, that's a topic for another video, but what I'm trying to say is this, although it's a good start, it gets lame fast. So we clearly can't outsource thinking. Critical thinking is a necessary value to have nowadays if you want a good life. So what do we do about it? Well, a good start would be eliminating this shit down here that I just talked about. The number one best way to make good decisions is to trust yourself, is to reconnect to your intuition, and is to make your thinking clear. You can see that all of these are very adjacent to mental health, and that's why I highlighted this as the thesis of this video, is because if you have good mental health, if you like yourself, if you think clearly, etc., and you're actually preoccupied with yourself instead of all of these outside distractions, you're going to crush it. Furthermore, I think a good way to do that is by implementing my framework of GME. I'm not a clinician, but I did a lot of research and I've read a bunch of the papers from Harvard and Yale and all these top universities. And these are the three that I found pop up in every single study about mental health and happiness in general. By gratitude, I mean having a frame of mind where you understand that nothing in life is given. Everything you can choose to be negative about or you can choose to be grateful for. You are just you. And it would be like foolish to be afraid of losing anything when nothing truly belongs to you. So you could have the mindset of, oh, I don't want to lose this, I don't want to lose that. Or you could be like, wow, I get to experience this flower right now in the garden. I get to experience this moment with you here, and I'm eternally grateful for you watching this video. That's a mindset shift. Now, you can kind of make this a systematic thing where you wake up every single morning and you write out 5 things you're grateful for. And I think that's a very, very good step. So that's something that you might want to look into, especially if you're feeling a bit down mental health-wise. The second one is meditation. I think meditation is, well, maybe the best habit. It's top 3 definitely. I can say top 3 definitely, but for me it's probably the best habit. And the reason is because this is the number one skill for regulation. You know, I drew this kind of, did I draw it? Maybe I didn't. Where is it? I can't find it. Anyway, I draw this kind of thing where, you have your mind and you have your tiny conscious mind. And what ends up happening throughout the day is you have a bunch of external sources and they fill up your mind. Oh, the tram just stopped. Is there an accident? Oh, okay, this girl looks cute. Maybe I should walk up to her. Okay, someone just took the 20-kilogram plate. I must look for another one in the gym. That's what your mind is being filled up with, and there's no problem with that, but it's not you. And if you do this all the time, if 99% of your thoughts or 100% of them are coming from the outside, you're going to become dysregulated because you're not feeling your emotions, you're not thinking your thoughts. Meditation shuts out everything. You're not using your seeing, you're not using your... There's no smells around you, there's no noises around you, preferably. So what ends up happening is, if you've tried shutting up your mind, spoiler alert, it doesn't work, you're going to start getting thoughts from within. And the longer you do it for, the deeper the thoughts. And that's an amazing place to be. First of all, if you just detach from fucking yourself, it's actually kind of a nice experience. If you do it for a bit, you can kind of learn to like meditation. It's really not that hard. But even if you just look at it for the benefits, you're going to think clearer because a bunch of the fog that you have down here will evaporate. You're going to know yourself better because you're going to get your own thoughts and your own experiences, and your emotional regulation will go through the roof. You will get better at discipline. You will get more motivated. All of that. It's such an all-encompassing skill. And for all of that, I think that it is the number one skill or number one practice that increases your skill at making decisions. That's a better way to put it. The best practice to increase your decision-making capabilities. Finally, this is like also one that I found a lot, maybe a bit less than the number 1 and number 2 things, but this helps me immensely. And every single time I fall off in exercise, let's actually draw a graph for this one. Every single time I kind of fall off in exercise, everything else follows. Maybe a few months later, but everything else follows. Every single time I kind of took my exercise levels down in life, my life just falls apart. So I just really like exercises. It's also quite a meditative experience, and I think it's just so healthy. It just helps your vehicle of your body become a much better place to be. So if you manage to hit all 3 of these points, first of all, to give yourself time, understand your emotions, and every single time you're faced with a negative emotion, surrender to it. If you can, learn detachment and understand that you are fucking nothing. And that's a beautiful thing to be. And thirdly, implement the mental health practices to hone your mental health and make sure that you're going to be in a good state of mind by practicing gratitude, meditation, and exercise. Your mental health will be immaculate. And the reason immaculate mental health is so important nowadays is not because it's a hype thing. It's not because it's a trend. It's not because it will make you cool. It's because it's the only thing that you can rely on. If you have bad mental health, you will make bad decisions. And like me, a lot of those decisions will affect large areas of your life. Warren Buffett said something like, if you have a 55% decision success rate, you should go to Wall Street and you'll become a billionaire. Something like that. And it's true. All you need is to make one more good decision a year, realistically. And the best way to make good decisions isn't by having information, it's by having a mind which uses that information correctly. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.